And I will be your MC today. Mon nom est Félix Corriveau de la FCM et je vais être votre maître de cérémonie aujourd'hui. Welcome to this press conference by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that we gather today in Calgary. Today in Calgary, we offer respect for those who traditionally lived on these land and welcome those who have made Calgary their home. Calgary is located on the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. This event is organized on the occasion of the meeting of FCM's Big City Mayors Caucus BCMC, FCM President Scott Pearce, as well as Mayor of the Halifax Metropolitan Region, Mayor Mike Savage, as well as Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek will soon deliver remarks. The question period will then begin after these remarks, and you will be asked to ask your questions and one follow-up question if you wish to. Before asking your question, please kindly introduce yourself and identify who the question is directed to. La période de questions va débuter après les discours. Si vous avez des questions, bien vouloir vous présenter et dire si vous souhaitez poser une question de relance et dire à qui cette question s'adresse. On that, Mayor Pearce, President Pearce, over to you.
Thank you, Felix. Hello, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et tous. As president of FCM, I spent the past year meeting people from all over our country. Everywhere, and I mean everywhere, residents spoke to me about the urgent need to invest in building and maintaining the infrastructure that impacts their daily lives. Everywhere, I heard about the importance of increasing services to ensure the success of our communities for generations to come, as our country is facing historic population growth. In talking with Canadians, they all recognize that as their government of proximity, municipalities stretch every dollar to the limit to ensure that their community can thrive. But our hard work is being hampered by a funding model put in place in 1867. That's a time when people rode buggies and lit their homes with candlelight. It's high time to upgrade this financing model. It just doesn't work in 2024. Over the past year, I've often been asked, how would a new municipal growth framework improve my quality of life? Well, there's quite a few answers to that. It would give municipalities the ability to plan long-term investments without always having to apply for grants and rely on programs that eventually run out. It would mean better roads, better public transit to get people to work on time in the morning. It would mean well-maintained parks and playgrounds where you can take your kids and spend quality time together. It would mean living in your home knowing that clean water will come out of your faucets and that your garbage will be collected on time. It would mean not constantly worrying about which municipal services will be cut off if a natural disaster or extreme weather strikes, and we know it's going to happen more and more as time goes on. Il est grand temps de donner aux municipalités les ressources dont elles ont besoin pour s'assurer que ces services et équipements locaux essentiels ne soient pas menacés. In Canada, municipalities only collect 8 to 10 cents on the tax dollar, yet we maintain 60% of the infrastructure across the country. It just can't continue like that. Today we're putting forward a vision of a future where you can come home each night to a community that has the support it needs to support you. Today, after consulting with municipalities, housing and finance stakeholders, academics, we're launching a new paper, Making Canada's Growth a Success. This lays out the case for a new municipal growth framework. It sets out real recommendations to modernize a financing model that doesn't address the needs of the modern world. Some of our recommendations, are the need to modernize municipal funding by tying federal transfers to population and economic growth by linking them to Canada's GDP. the need to increase direct annual transfers to municipalities by $2.6 billion. That would bring the total to $5 billion when paired with the existing Canada Community Building Fund. The need, and it's an absolute need, to call on all orders of government to develop comprehensive plans to end chronic homelessness. You can read our analysis and recommendations at fcm.ca, Making Canada's Growth a Success, ou, en français, fcm.ca, Faire de la croissance du Canada un succès. Today, we are sending a very, very clear message. To Canadians, read this document. It's about your quality of life, your family's quality of life, and your community's quality of life. Call on your federal elected representatives. Tell them it's time for your municipalities to be funded at a level commensurate with the quality of life that all Canadians deserve. To elected municipal officials, in the coming months, mobilize. Use every opportunity you have. Call on the government on your social media platforms. Organize meetings. Do everything you can do to remind the government of the urgent, and it's urgent, need to act for the well-being of the Canadian people. We need to update the way we finance municipalities. The order of government, what I call the government of proximity, we're on the front line. And every mayor and councillor I know, their only goal is to ensure the quality of life of the people in their communities, the quality of life of all Canadians. To the government, the time has come. Canadians deserve to unlock the full growth potential of our municipalities. We're calling on the federal government to commit in next fall's economic statement to bring together all levels of government to discuss a new municipal growth framework. We need to form a Canadian team where municipalities, the provinces, the territories, and the federal government all work together to benefit all Canadians. Nous demandons au gouvernement fédéral de s'engager dans la prochaine énoncé économique d'automne à réunir tous les niveaux du gouvernement pour discuter d'un nouveau cadre de croissance municipale. Together, we can make our community stronger, better resourced, and better protected for generations to come. And the time is now. With that, my friend and colleague, I'd like to introduce you. He's the chair of the Big City Mayor Caucus, Mr. Mike Savage from Halifax. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. Ladies and gentlemen, before I begin, I'd like to just acknowledge that this is the anniversary of D-Day, when brave Canadian soldiers died on the beaches in some cases, were injured with our allies, and their memory will never be lost to us. In a city like Halifax, which has such a high percentage of people who serve and have served, it means a great deal. And it's also the anniversary of the slaughter of a Muslim family in London, Ontario. And there's a lot of lessons, and there will always be in our heart as well. So thank you very much, Scott. Scott has really put his finger on the need for a municipal growth framework about really safeguarding quality of life in our communities. In our big cities, we're living in a period of exceptional population growth, which only adds to the scale of the challenge. And the pressures are immense on existing housing and holding on to affordable rental properties, on tackling homelessness, an acute problem in all of our big cities, but increasingly in communities of all sizes across Canada, on ensuring public safety, and on making sure that our communities are protected from the worst effects of climate change and extreme weather. If we don't respond with ambition and foresight, the quality of life of all of our citizens will be affected, including those in our biggest cities. To really address our long-term issues, we require a long-term solution. This new paper that FCM is releasing today really sets out how do we get to a place that Scott was picturing, where communities and Canadians alike can thrive. For cities, the impact that a municipal growth framework could have is massive. and be a huge assistance to the efforts that we're already making. Calgary, where we are today, is the housing hotspot in what's been our fastest growing province. This city has made great efforts to increase supply, including converting old offices into new housing, which is now paying off. Cities like Vancouver have moved to densify around their mass transit systems. Montreal has invested in more social housing. Everywhere we're seeing cities, including my own city of Halifax, fast-tracking the construction of new units. Now, imagine how a new way to fund municipalities, to boost these efforts, could benefit all of our cities, rather than continuing to rely on an outdated 19th century framework. Passer à un cadre moderne ne serait pas seulement judicieux, ce serait transformateur. Ce serait la clé qui permettrait à nos villes d'offrir de meilleurs transports en commun, des meilleurs logements, des meilleurs équipements et de meilleures installations récréatives. It's clear that a municipal growth framework would also make our cities more resilient, empowering local government with the long-term resources to weather the flooding, fires, and extreme weather. In Halifax, we went through last year, at this very week, a very serious wildfire. Municipalities need every tool that's available to increase preparedness, and a new framework must be part of that. I think it's worthwhile to reinforce there's nothing to lose from us coming together to discuss, as orders of government, how we can support a better future for Canadian communities. We need a commitment from the government on a municipal growth framework that ensures economic development and a stronger quality of life for our population. I don't believe it's exaggerating to say that it's urgent. We cannot wait any longer. Canadians are at risk to be left behind. The stakes, especially I would say in our big cities, are simply too high not to follow through on this. So I also hope that you will visit fcm.ca/Making Canada's Growth a Success to see the potential for our communities and exactly how we can get there. So in my role as chair of the Big City Mayors Caucus for about 4 more hours, I echo that important call that Scott just made. It is time for the federal government to commit to convening orders of government to discuss a vital municipal growth framework in the upcoming fall economic statement. So thank you, and with that, I'd like to hand this over now to a very busy person today, my fellow BCM caucus member and our good friend, Mayor Jyoti Gondek.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Mayor, for your comments. I'd like to say Oki, Daranastada, Ambawastich, and Tansei. These are greetings to all of you in the mother languages of the Treaty 7 peoples who stewarded the lands at the confluence of the Bow and Elbow River for generations before many of us came to settle here. Came to settle here on this great land to build great cities. However, we can't continue the way things are going. My colleagues have expressed the concerns that we have, the incredible issues that we face, and the fact that we need a municipal growth framework. I can echo those comments, and I can also give you some data points and some live examples. Calgary is the fastest growing city in this nation, to the tune of 260 people moving here a day. If you want to put that into a visual, that's about one of those accordion buses full of people moving to our city every day. And we are doing our very best as a local government to keep pace, but we can't do it alone. And when we are relying on a century-old model of funding, we certainly can't keep moving forward. So if the federal government is serious about supporting cities that are the economic engine of this nation, they need to be sitting down with us to understand what our direct needs are. The flow-through that has traditionally gone from the federal government to the provincial government and then trickling down to municipalities, it doesn't work. It is failing, and it's failing disastrously. I can give you the example today in Calgary where we have a water feeder main break that is impacting everyone in this city, whether you live here or you're a visitor. We have asked people to please constrain their use of water. That's the type of situation we're in. If we are going to carry forward building great cities, we need everyone at the table to help us do this. We are going to need some funding, and we're going to need certainty and predictability in that funding. So I stand with my colleagues and the great work that FCM has done on putting out a paper that talks about a municipal growth framework and saying to the federal government, the time is long past when you have to change your model, and we need you at the table now, together with the provincial government, to help us keep this nation going, because cities are absolutely the economic engine and municipalities are the places that are closest to the people. And I'll turn things back to Felix.
Thank you all. C'est maintenant le temps de la période des questions et réponses. Now it's the time for the question and answer period. You can ask one question and one follow-up question. Before you ask your question, let me remind you, I will ask you to give us your name, the outlet you're working for, and who your question is directed to. Vous pouvez vous poser une question de relance. Avant de le faire, s'il vous plaît, donnez-nous votre nom et le nom de votre média. Et ensuite de ça, dites-moi à qui vous voulez poser votre question. Now, I want this to be civilized and organized. So if you have questions about a new municipal growth framework, please ask these questions first. Then, thank you. If you have questions about the situation in Calgary, we can address them with Mayor Gondek. All right? Thank you. First question. Don't be shy, come on.
I'll go first.
Yeah, why don't you?
For President Pearce. Sure. Just to ensure we have it correctly, the money that you're talking about from the federal government, that would be in addition to the money that has been announced in recent years for the National Transit Fund?
Well, what we're asking for is two major things. For us in the municipal world, we want partners. You know, this jurisdictional arguing that we see sometimes, it's not conducive to creating the quality of life that Canadians deserve. We need to work together, provinces, territories, municipalities, and the federal government. And without that, it's a recipe for failure. The 2.6 ask is we already have what's called the Building Canadian Communities Fund. And that's a fund for small towns like mine across the country. What tends to happen, the federal or provincial governments come out with programs. These programs are worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. But smaller municipalities don't have engineers or architects on staff. So they have to go to an outside source. So to build, say I need a town hall. It's going to cost me $300,000 to $400,000 just to get plans and everything ready. Now, if I don't get the grant, then I've lost that money. I've spent money that I don't have anything to show my residents. So a lot of the small towns, they're afraid to embark on projects they actually need, a new fire hall, a new town hall. So when we have the Building Canadian Communities Fund, that's money that flows directly to municipalities. We know what we need to do. In my case, I get, I think, $250,000 a year from my community. So last year, we used that to, our fire hall had a leaky roof. We fixed our roof. Our community center was in bad shape. We put new floors. We fixed the community center. These are not luxury items. These are basic items that our citizens need. So what we're asking for is, let's raise that from the 2.4 to 5 billion and really answer the needs of municipalities on the ground. It's about that, because as I'm sure you understand that, I have a $6 million budget a year in my small little town. Now, if I spend $500,000 to make plans and have architects and engineers for a new town hall and I don't get that grant, I've lost a lot of money on my budget. So you'll see stagnation in small towns, where what they need more is investments and getting our capacity higher. And again, climate change adaptation in rural areas is a big thing as well. In my region, we had 200-year floods in 3 years. It was supposed to be once every 100 years. It happened twice in 3 years. So these are the things that we need, and obviously bigger cities have bigger needs for public transit, so I'll let them speak to that. Public transit for me is pretty much non-existent. You know, I'm 80 kilometers from Montreal, but for me it's the basic needs of, you know, your fire hall being in shape, your community center being able to have events for your citizens. So that's where that direct funding source is very helpful to small towns across the country. Thank you for your question. But I'll let Mike speak to transit more than myself.
Thank you very much. So in terms of what this $2.6 billion does, yes, we've been very fortunate. We've had a number of programs that the federal government have supported in infrastructure. So on transit, the Permanent Transit Infrastructure Fund, water and wastewater programs, has been funding for homelessness through Reaching Home and through the rapid housing. There was an infrastructure fund that was announced recently. in the beautiful city of Halifax by Minister Fraser. All of these things are really, really helpful to us, but we need to stop going cap in hand all the time and recognize that the nature of how the fiscal frameworks of each of the orders of government in Canada has changed. In Halifax, another very fast-growing city, as soon as somebody moves to Halifax, they start paying provincial sales tax to the provincial government right away. They pay income tax to the province and the federal government. And you would think eventually the property tax that they have would pay for what they need, but it doesn't. The percentage of income that cities have had from the overall taxation, Scotty mentioned it when it's 8 to 10 cents, it used to be 14 cents. It's gone down significantly. So what we're saying is, I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we would say we don't need these project funds on important areas that we can agree on, infrastructure. But on an ongoing basis, we're saying that we need something that recognizes the growth. And more particularly, who shoulders the cost of that growth? Because when people move into Halifax or Gore or Calgary, they want water, they want green space, they want, in a big city, transit. And so some of that can be handled with projects, but on an ongoing basis, let's recognize the property tax system of funding, which goes back 150 or more years, no longer works. It just doesn't work for municipalities.
To follow up with you, Mayor, we live in a country, it seems very hard to even get a first minister's conference to bring municipalities to the table. What do you think would be the best vehicle? Would that be the big city mayors? Would it be the FCM? Something else?
So I'm not running again in Halifax. I've been mayor for 12 years. I've been the chair of this caucus. I'm constantly amazed at FCM's ability to pull people together in the work that they do. It's unparalleled. I used to be a member of parliament. I saw it then, but now it's at a whole new level. And so are these things hard? Yeah. Some things are hard. That means that they're important and that they need to be done. So I think through perhaps BCMC or through FCM more generally, working with provincial, territorial, and and frankly First Nation governments as well, that's why we're asking. The mechanism of how to do it, I understand that it's challenging, but everything that's worthwhile is.
I'll just add to that very quickly. I think it's important to recognize that provinces and municipalities are asking for the same thing. We want our fair share, and we want our fair share back from what we are contributing to the federal government. So when we are doing well in our municipalities and income tax dollars are flowing to the federal government, we would like to see an appropriate portion of that coming back to us, and we are simply not. Same thing goes with the provincial government. I can tell you that Calgary has done a report similar to what FCM has done, and we've looked at our municipal fiscal gap. Over time, we are missing $311 million annually that used to come to us from the provincial government. I don't know how much higher that amount is right now. $311 million gap every single year for our municipality. We deserve to get more out of the income taxes that we are paying to the federal government.
Mike Simon, CBC. Further to that, and come on.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add, it's tongue-in-cheek, but in the municipal world, we often say the feds have all the money, the province has all the power, and we have all the problems. And that's really the reality of it. And as I said, I can't say it enough. Whether you're a provincial member of parliament, an MLA, in a provincial government, or a mayor, we should all be working together. We work for Canadians. And I think that's the call that FCM has. That's the most important one. We're all there for Canadians. And if we don't work together, we're not being as helpful as we should be as elected people.
Mike Simon, CBC News. I'm a little surprised that you prioritized your ask to the federal government. I understand there's the most money there. But the direct communication would be the province. And I know in our province, we've seen a gradual undercoming of the funding to the two major municipalities. So what do we need to do to get maybe the provinces more involved? And why was it your priority to kind of spotlight maybe your relationships with the provinces government?
Well, in Quebec, our premier answered the call to a certain extent. There was going to be a sharing of 1% of the Quebec sales tax with municipalities. It's not enough, but it's not at 1% of the whole. It's 1% of the increase year after year, which, again, for a small municipality like mine, it adds about $130,000 to my budget, which does, help me respond to some of the needs of the people in my community. So I think Mr. Legault showed leadership in Quebec on that. And again, we're not here to tell provinces how to react or tell the federal government how to react. We're saying we need to find a solution to this problem because The funding model dates back to 1867. Things have changed, and we're responsible for a lot more than, I mean, I've been mayor 20 years, and we're a lot more responsible for things now than I was 20 years ago. I mean, so the call for me, and I think for all of us, is we're not adversaries. Let's be partners and find solutions for the Canadian people. That's why we're here. That's why we run for election. Thanks.
And so, yes, so your question is a good one. Why is it the ask of the federal government? It's the ask of provincial governments as well. FCM is a national organization. When we come together, we're the big city mayors of Canada. FCM is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We're working at the local level in Nova Scotia. It's the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. So, but this is a national thing, and I think, you know, for things to really happen, national leadership is really important. So that's why we're doing this ask here.
It's a really good question, and you've got some great responses, and I can position for you the Calgary and the Alberta example. Not only has the Federation of Canadian Municipalities come out with this call to action, but Alberta Municipalities, as our overarching association, made the very same call, and they pointed out how much money was missing from the provincial budget that needed to come to municipalities. So it's not that we are saying one order of government is more responsible than the other. We need to appeal to both of them. And frankly, when both of them are at odds with each other, like the Alberta government with the federal government, we are caught in an interesting scenario where it feels like mom and dad are fighting, and we are just waiting for someone to feed us dinner. And in fact, it's gotten worse over time. Mom and dad are fighting, and they've also said to us, you know what, kids, you need to take on some more chores. Not only are you going to take out the trash, but now we need you to do the dishes too, and maybe a load of laundry and buy the groceries. And when we said, okay, we're going to need an allowance to afford all of those things, there wasn't one. So if I can give it to you in simple terms, that's what this feels like.
FCM seeking a commitment from the federal government by the fall economic statement. But of course, there's a federal election next year, so there will be some time to build some of these recommendations and implement them. How long are municipalities prepared to wait, and how long can municipalities wait for something like this?
Well, we've been talking about this for a while, and we've had some ministers in the federal government who found it as important as we do. So look, it has to happen fast. I mean, it's a real struggle out there. I mean, I'll give you an example. In Quebec alone, it's so tough, and I've never seen this. I've been mayor 20 years. Over 800 municipal people resigned since the last election in 2021. The pressure is immense because they want to get the job done. They want to fix the streets and the roads. They want to fix the bridges, but they don't have the funds. So when you have 800 people who got involved, and they're local community members, you know, your plumber, your electrician who decide to run as a councillor, and they have to resign because they can't take it anymore, it shows that it's urgent for not just for the elected people, but for Canadians in the towns where they live. So I'm hoping that they're going to want to come to the table very, very soon, and even before the fall economic statement. And like I said, there's been ministers who have shown a lot of interest already. So I think we've been doing a good job of explaining to them how serious the issue is on the ground. Because at the end of the day, we're the experts on the ground, right? It's not a bureaucrat in Ottawa that's going to tell me what I need in my little community. He probably couldn't find my community with a map. So it's us, you know, we're the ones that knows what we need, and we know what our citizens need in our communities. Thank you.
So FCM deal with all parties. This week we'll hear from all parties at our national convention. Our job is to deal with the government that's in power right now, but we obviously are focused on all parties and potentially all government partners as well. So we deal with everybody that we possibly can to make the case, whether they're in power or not. But certainly with the government that's in power now, obviously has a big importance to us. And we've had pretty good relations, but we just need more. And this municipal growth framework is not new to ministers like Minister Fraser and others who we've met with and talked to about this. We know it's a big deal, but we also know it's a big deal because it's a big problem and there's opportunities to fix it.
Just for my follow-up, I found this interesting, allowing municipalities to use federal funding for both operating and capital costs as a recommendation. I'm not super familiar with the current rules around that. Are you guys not allowed to use operating costs, and how would that help municipalities
take a crack at that? Well, different programs have different requirements, obviously. Some are specifically capital. I think if you asked any mayor in Canada, what's the most valuable program to you overall year after year? It's what used to be called the gas tax, the Canada Community Building Fund. Started in 2004-5 as part of the New Deal for Cities of Prime Minister Paul Martin, because that gives us flexibility. And we're like every order of government. The more flexibility we have, as Scott said, we know what needs to be done. But we'll never take money from another order of government under certain stipulations and change it. But the more flexibility we have, the better we can react to the needs of our constituents.
Another question on the new municipal growth framework? Okay, that is a no. Question on the situation in Calgary.
I got one from Mayor Gondek first, but then I have one for SCU.
Okay.
So Mayor, we have the situation obviously unfolding here. I've had a couple sources reach out and say this transfer or feeder pipe was identified as a project that needed upgrading and maintenance has been done on it recently. I'm curious if you can confirm when that was and kind of what the situation around that feeder pipe is.
Thank you for that question. We have a presser coming up at 3 p.m. today at the Emergency Operations Center that's going to provide a lot more detail around the age of the infrastructure and the maintenance that was done on it and any plans for the future. So I will wait and let the experts weigh in on that, but I can confirm that maintenance work was performed earlier this year. So this is definitely a feeder main that we knew needed some attention. And so that attention was provided. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in this situation right now. And at this particular point in time, my greatest concern is making sure that the residents of Bowness can get past the boiled water advisory. They need to be able to return to a good quality of life. And the folks in Montgomery that are also dealing with water issues because of pressure, that's who we're focused on. So this morning's press conference dealt very much with what we need to do to take care of Calgarians, and the one this afternoon will focus more on the infrastructure.
I do have one for SCM on this. Back in 2016, FCM did a report that found Canada has $51 billion worth of water and wastewater infrastructure that's aging and needs replacement. Obviously, that was some time ago, 8 years ago now. But I'm curious, what are the concerns around that? Obviously, as we talk about growth and new funding for municipalities, what is the concerns with that aging infrastructure side of things that you guys are hoping the feds in the process to step up and help with?
I'll let Mike take it, because my municipality is all wells and septic systems.
Well, you went back to 2016. Let me go back to 2012. I was elected mayor of Halifax in 2012. One of my first meetings was with Halifax Water, which is a great water utility. It's strung away from the municipality. It's got its own board of directors. And they came to see me and they said, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to sort of, rain on the parade. You've just been elected. But we have an integrated resource plan for the next 10 years that's going to require $2 billion worth of work. At the time, the budget of the city of Halifax was probably $700 million, and that's a big hunk of money. So for a long time, FCM has said, we need this. And there's a lot of municipalities, small and large, that need water or wastewater. We need it. This is, we've seen examples of when water and wastewater systems don't work and how bad they can be. So in fairness, the federal government, the Conservative government had their infrastructure programs. When the new government came in, they had a number of infrastructure programs, one of which was specifically around water and wastewater and green stuff. And so a lot of money's been spent, but there is no question. There is a large amount of outstanding infrastructure that's required on water and wastewater, particularly. And that is part of why we think we need a new municipal growth framework that allows us to deal with these things more efficiently. It really affects the health and welfare of Canadians.
Question for Mayor Gondek. Don't worry, we won't go technical, that's for later. But I just wanted to get a read from you in terms of your satisfaction with the state's communication. We have heard complaints from our viewers, listeners about the lack of information last night. I know there was obviously a triage process underway, I would think at an event like this. But also this morning when the province sends out an emergency alert that has different information from what the city of Calgary was communicating. So can you talk a bit about your thoughts about the communications?
I think anytime you find yourself in a situation like this where there's a crisis and you ask yourself a question of could the communication have been better, every time you will say, yes, it could have been better. We can always improve. I would say that we needed to respond to the situation on the ground, and we needed to get messaging out to Calgarians. And I know the city did their absolute best to get it out through all of their channels. I know social media was activated, media outlets were informed, and we just didn't have the information that we needed. We used the emergency alert as a process to get to as many people as possible. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a difference in the wording. I can clarify. We have stage 4 restrictions in place for outdoor water usage. So we are saying to people, please don't water your lawns, don't wash your cars, please restrict all of your outside water usage. And we are nudging and reminding folks that when we come together as Calgarians, we do some pretty big things. So we are asking people to consider reducing their water usage inside their homes as well. It's not a restriction, it is something that we're asking of people.
So just to clarify, Mayor, was the city provided the information that the province put out on the emergency alert? Is that how that worked?
Yes, and I think because things were moving so quickly, perhaps some of the wording was not as clear as it could have been. And I think the point was more so to get the alert out to everyone so that people could then find information on other channels, and people were just aware that we were in an emergency situation. So sometimes the continuity between messaging is not perfect, and this was an example of that.
We have time for one more question. Anyone?
Well, if nobody else will go there. Mayor.
Which one?
Just Mayor. Calgary question. Is the city going to look at any further restrictions that might involve businesses directly? I think about, car washes, for example. That's something you can postpone until you get past something like this. But, they are high water users. There's a soft drink company in Calgary that bottles a lot of bottled water for, I think, a good part of Western Canada, if not the whole country. Is the city looking at something along that line?
Anytime we have a situation like this, our teams are looking at all of the options that are before us, and we are also very cognizant that we don't want to disrupt the economy. And so we are looking at the economic needs of those businesses, and we are looking at the water needs of everyone in the area. And we also have some pretty large customers who we are working with. I can confirm that several of them have spoken with me and indicated that they have reduced their water usage to be good corporate citizens. So we do have a lot of people banding together to see us through this. And I'm really hoping that we can get to a position of repair very, very quickly.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Do we have to wait 4 more hours here? So
Pardon me?